Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AnthroPuzzled podcast. I'm your host, Abby Letzinger, and every 2 weeks we'll explore how anthropologists are forging unique career paths beyond the usual academic sphere. Tune in, get inspired, and start piecing together your own career puzzle within the world of anthropology. On today's episode, we're excited to welcome Edher Zamudio. He holds a master's in applied anthropology from San Jose State University, as well as a master's in Latin American and Latino/Latina studies from UC Santa Cruz. Edher also earned a bachelor's in sociology and Latino studies from San Francisco State University and an associate's degree in social behavioral science and Latino studies from City College of San Francisco. Currently, he serves as a student services specialist at UC Davis, while also teaching part-time as an Ethnic Studies Instructor at Cosumnes River College. How are you doing today, Edher?
Hi, Abby. Yeah, it's Friday, so I'm actually looking forward to the end of Friday so we can rest for a little bit.
I feel that. I wish I didn't have a weekend job because then I could just go into my weekend and do nothing, but that's how it is these days. So what does a student service specialist do?
So first, thank you for inviting me to your show and just being part of this journey. I think that for the context of UC Davis and other colleges alike, within California, there is about 10 UCs. For example, I work in UC Davis, which is a college in Northern California. There is one, for example, in San Diego, UC San Diego. Across all these UCs and other colleges and pretty much colleges around the US, roles like mine tend to work with students directly. For my particular case, I actually work with all graduate students in UC Davis. Students who are seeking their master's, their credential, their PhD, and any program that is after your bachelor's pretty much. As the students are, for example, completing their units, trying to advance to candidacy or trying to schedule their qualifying exams if they are in the PhD route. My role is to, in a way, guide them and make sure that they are complying to the policy that we have in grad studies and also the policy within their departments as well. And I think that these roles are essential, not just in colleges, but, nonprofits that work with students or high schools that have counselors. We are, in a way, the mediators between students and the institution itself. So we're ensuring that students go through their journey, through their post-secondary journey, complying to policy and making sure that they can actually successfully graduate, because institutions like colleges are huge. They have so many policies in place and students don't have the time to go all over those policies while trying to complete their coursework, trying to do their TA-ship, trying to do their thesis for the dissertation. So I believe that we're the mediators between the students and the institution, and it's our job to help them graduate.
Okay, so kind of what does your day-to-day look like?
So my day-to-day, it has changed. When I began my job at UC Davis, there's two roles that were higher, and I got one of those. And initially was that we have access to Box, and there were hundreds of forms there that we had to process. So at the beginning, it meant a lot. Make sure that this form, has the appropriate signatures. Make sure that the student has added their ID. So trying to make these forms compliant. So it began very administrative oriented. UC Davis has over 100 graduate programs. You can tell how many forms our unit was getting, the academic unit, but there was a lot of attention in the student interface. But when it came to processing forms, we were a little slow at the time. So when we came in, my colleague and I, we were trying to make sure that everything was neat, clean, that everything gets processed, that there's questions with answers to everything. And then we switched to an online system that I no longer have to look at a PDF. For the most part, out of 15 forms, maybe 90% of them now are through the online system, and the IT team is trying to switch every form to online. And now it's definitely more fluid, but I think that I have now gone into a phase that I'm also trying to help program coordinators of every department sometimes, trying to help them understand the system, because the system is also very complex and I don't do IT or coding. So now I'm also helping them. I also help the students via email. So my job has been evolving a little more as we're implementing technology to help processes. So it can be very varied. Some days I get 100 forms, 50 forms on my portal. Each one of them might repeat a lot. Others are new. Others are missing signatures. So I just have to communicate. Other days, I get more emails from students like, hey, I just wanted to know why my application was rejected. I got your note, but I don't understand what you mean. So other days, I'm meeting with the students explaining my comments if they don't make sense, and that's normal. In other cases, I'm meeting with some program coordinators to answer some questions that they might have, such as wanting to have a professor that is outside the University of California system, being part of a dissertation committee. So I have to talk to them and sometimes guide them about that. And other times we meet with my older peers to see how is the student services going from their perspective, my perspective, and things like that. So I'll say that weekly can vary a lot. So yeah, we do a lot of things in the academic services journey.
Do you ever have to like throw events or hold events?
So yes, our unit has 6 members. We have our director, then we have 3 senior academic advisors who specifically are supposed to be meeting with students to address particular needs, such as students maybe having to leave 1 quarter or a whole year. And then we are the student services specialists, and we are in charge of making sure students' forms are in compliance, right? So we're like all interconnected. Yes, right now we have events about how to file for graduation, for thesis, dissertation, and pretty much any student who is trying to just complete their degree in UC Davis. We are actually trying to collaborate with other units to see what other events we can potentially have that are in the service of the students. And we're also very encouraged by our supervisor to individually collaborate with other units. For example, I recently was part of we have a mentoring program too, and recently was invited to share part of my experience being undocumented and going to grad school 2 times, and what mentoring meant to me in those spaces. So we do events as a unit, but we also participate in other events separate from our unit, individually, of course.
Okay. How did you choose this career path? Like, what was your experience like that led you into being a student service specialist?
So, that goes back a long time ago. When I came to the US at the age of 15, straight from Lima, I didn't speak any English. Let me rephrase that. In other countries, yes, you have English classes, but you don't really put attention as a teenager because you never think you're going to migrate. So like here, students might learn Spanish and they might forget it after 2 or 3 years. So we decided to come here. My mom had some connections. So we were lucky, privileged to say that, to have someone who hosted us for some time. On my first day in Mission High School in San Francisco, across the Lawrence Park, my counselor, Mr. Albano, told me right away, hey, Edher, so in Spanish, fluent, 100% fluent. He asked me, what is it you want to do? And I said, well, I know I want to go to college, but I don't know what that means here. And then he said, do you have papers? And then I said, nope. Sometime during my journey in grad school in Santa Cruz, I was able to adjust my status. By now, I'm a citizen, but that doesn't mean that, I have cut ties with the undocumented, with undocumented. If anything, it is my right now to become more informed, because some of these policies still impacts the community. And also, anyway, to me, it's personal. So in addition to that positive experience, because right away he told me, you know what, not a problem. There is this AB 540 law that allows undocumented students to pay as a California state resident to any 4-year college or community college. He's like, you're going to stay 3 years in Mission High School, even though you only need to stay 2. So I had to stay 1 more extra year, and then you go to City College, and then you'll figure it out. In addition to that, within Mission High School, I remember one rep from a nonprofit. San Francisco has so many nonprofits that want to convince, like myself, and also their immigrant parents. So in Mission High School, there was another rep from another nonprofit. I don't recall the name on the account of the name was very long. And then he was just advertising on a scholarship program, but it wasn't just money. It was like a program that gets you to visit college campuses, that helps you with college applications and a scholarship search. And I introduced myself. I asked him hey, so Mr. Albano just sent me, and he said that, you help the students go to college. And of course, this was in Spanish, not in English. And he spoke some Spanish. And then, of course, as my English got better within the first year, he then explained to me what the program was. And I'm like, yes, I'm in. And it was free. So of course I'm going to do that. But those positive encounters with agents and members of these different institutions, whether public or private, really told me the need for support, really expressed to me that there is a necessity for that students need an orientation, a guidance about resources, about how to reach a particular goal. And then when I began my journey actually at City College, I was there for 3 years. But in my second year to third year, I don't remember. I want to say, yeah, between the second and third year, which was 2009, fall of 9, spring 10, fall 10, maybe spring 11, one of those semesters, I met other peers who were also undocumented, and we were able to advocate and open a resource center for undocumented students. Now, we did have an advisor that sponsored us, but the center, we kind of ran it ourselves. Some of my peers were good at math. Anyone that would come that needed math or assistance with math, go to them. Anyone else for like sociology, I could help out and so on. We were also telling students like, hey, by the way, don't forget that there is the book loan program. Tomorrow you need to be there like 6 a.m. and make the line. So it became clear to me that sharing information was essential for student success. And not just sharing, like telling them where to go, sometimes dragging them and making them go and talk to that person. So I was becoming unconsciously, right? I was just sharing knowledge, just sharing my experience, just giving guidance. Then when I went to San Francisco State, it was a very similar pattern, sharing information, telling students what the professors, for example, were undocu-friendly. At that time, I mean, it also because I was in San Francisco, I was never fearful to disclose my immigration status because it's San Francisco. So in many cases, I would go to my professor's office hours and ask, hey, professor, can I get a letter of rec? I got an A in your class last semester. And they're like, yeah, sure. What do you need it for? Well, I have no papers, so I need a scholarship for college. And they were like, oh, like, thank you for disclosing your status with us. And then, of course, wrote me. So to me, that meant, okay, this professor is an ally. And any other students that I meet that are undocumented can definitely take a class with this professor if it's applicable to their major, right? And potentially ask for a reference or a letter of support. So, and during this time, of course, in San Francisco State, I was doing multiple jobs, but one of the ones that introduced me to more advising to other students was I worked for a whole semester or a whole year. It's been a long time for this nonprofit called College Track, which is a nonprofit that serves first generation low income students, and they have different chapters. They have, I think, a few chapters in Colorado. They have chapters in New Orleans. There's more chapters in Los Angeles. And my role there was, I think it was in regards to college accessibility. So I was with a small group of 10 to 15 high school students, and we were speaking about the requirements to go to, a CSU, California State University, a UC, like UC Davis, or a private college. What to consider: location, financial aid, distance from home, population-wise in the town, potential majors, potential resources. So I was advising high school students like, hey, think about this. This is a practical thing. Now, this came to me because I also understood that high school counselors are also inundated with big cohorts of students. So to me, I was actually reinforcing that advising perspective that counselors sometimes couldn't give to their students, or they simply didn't put attention to students who had a low GPA or were not exceeding academically. And I think this became even more present when I transitioned into being a grad student in Santa Cruz. You have to understand one thing. I was very clear with my students when I began my first grad path that I think I told them right away, like, look, this is my background. This is where I come from. I am very straightforward, and this is why. So you understand how I operate. And I get it very straightforward with them. If you see me grumpy, it's because I am very stressed out, because I am trying to read 10 articles a week for one class, and I'm taking 2 or 3 classes. And I will tell them, like, sometimes, look, going to grad school can be a very difficult process because you're becoming something else that is gonna sometimes separate you from your community. It's not a pleasant experience. And I noticed that as the students are going towards your office hours, they're not only asking questions about how can I make my essay better, but they're asking you, how do I make sense of my major? How do I tell my parents in another language, in Spanish, what a history degree does? What can I do with this major do I need to go to grad school? And I'm like, why am I getting questions about like things that are not the classroom, but things that are actually the apply, the professional, the what if I don't go to academia? And at the same time, I began working with the Educational Opportunity Program, and I had a small cohort of students too, first gen low income, also working on the same thing. Do I want to go to grad school or do I want to get a job right after my bachelor's? And then later on, my different jobs after that were located in a high school setting or nonprofit where I was working directly with first generation low income students and literally trying to answer their questions too, trying to guide them to the right way, to their degree, to potential internships, right? Help them with the search, help them with editing cover letters, a little bit of holistic support, you could say. And then I began my journey at San Jose State, where I had the privilege to work as a grad student intern with the Undocumented Resource Center, in which I not only interview self-undocumented students and hear their frustrations and successes, but also help the student interns. I was able to develop a potential mentoring program for them. You know, like I created this program, but it's yours and you can modify it based on your needs, based on the funding that you may have. You can edit one model, replace one model. This is, of course, at the time of the pandemic too, which is a different time. You know, these different years, these different times. And then, of course, we moved to Sacramento. We were living with my in-laws to save money. My wife was pregnant. And we were like, you know what? I miss the Bay Area, but I do not want to live there. I want to be a little far away. And then I was like, well, why? I want to continue servicing the students, but from working in nonprofits, from working through federal grants, from working in college spaces, I was like, I feel that the best effective way for me to service the students to, or give students guidance will be UC Davis around here. Like it was one of the closest colleges and they had openings, and I never had a chance to work with grad students. You know, I had the interview with UC Davis and I've been with them since summer of 23. It's gonna be 2 years this June coming up, but everything has just kind of interconnected, you know.
So you were getting your grad school degree or your master's degree while you were also kind of mentoring students. Do you have any advice for individuals who are going into grad school?
Yeah, so and it definitely has me being in grad school in different years and at different ages and different positions has definitely influenced my thought process for certain students. So when I was in Santa Cruz, I was my first years, I was there for 4 years. It was the doctoral degree, but I left with a master's because I realized in one of those years that there was not enough mentorship, there was not enough funding, the curriculum didn't really train you for methods. And when I applied to fellowships, the feedback will be great ideas. You have no methods. So I was very optimistic during those 4 years of Santa Cruz. In many of my sections, I will really end the class the last week with an overview of grad school. Thinking about grad school requires a big commitment. If you think of a master's, you can think of programs that are 1 year long, up to 3 years. If you go part-time, if you think of PhD, it's going to be maybe 5 years, 8 years. It's going to depend a lot in the department, but also the funding that you might get. If you're doing a credential, which is it is grad school, but it's a different kind of grad school. It might be a year after, and then you have to do a practice. If you're doing law, you're going to be very stressed out for the next 3 years and more in depth than most people, but you will be able to charge your clients $200 an hour after, and just giving them a space to think about their prospects. And in many cases, I had students that asked me, so how is your mental health? And I will often say, well, it's very difficult for me to say that grad school didn't impact my mental health. It will be a lie. It did. And not only you can see because I grew white hair, and some of them notice the intensity of grad school to the point that I will go to sleep thinking of work and I will wake up thinking about the same. And you will just be drained every day, especially towards the end of the term. And then the uncertainty of like, what am I going to do after you pass your qualifying exams? And then in the job market, it definitely was very draining. And then at least for me, I told my students, look, there's also one thing to consider. I'm telling you, all of this is just logistics in a way, but how do you feel? If you're drained after 4 years or 5 years and you want to go ahead and drain yourself more, I think that you should really care about your mental health first, potentially get a job, earn some money, pay some of those loans, and then decide, do I want to commit to grad school or not? Now, in the other hand, if you have a professor who is telling you, no, apply to our grad program, we can give you funding, and you're excited about the topic, you could risk it. Your financial security, you will have some financial security. If you love the topic and you're willing to do that every day, then go for it. Other students, I will tell them, look, in my case, I only have my mom here. I have no one else. and she sends a lot of her money to Peru for remittances to sustain my grandma. She is my responsibility. During those times, I would tell them like, I'm sending some of my money to my mom, so I cannot say I'm financially stable. So you might want to consider how your family responsibilities might impact your academic performance and, of course, your mental health. So I told him to consider, sure, the financial, the academic, but also think of the personal. What are other factors or the other events taking place in your life that might affect you as a person? And your professors might not be understanding of that. So you also have to consider that as you go into grad school. Well, it's a part-time job. You have to research what is school, the location, the faculty, the research they're doing, and how it aligns to you. So I will have a conversation in some of my sections at the end of the term to let them know, like, hey, this is what you could potentially do. And then, of course, when I transition to, well, in my other graph journey to say in San Jose State, I had similar conversations, but I will actually enforce to students to actually think of getting a job right after their undergrad, because this was post-pandemic. And I think that during the pandemic, a lot of students became more drained. They were just more drained. I feel like the absence of in-person interaction deeply affected their capacity to connect with others and capacity to engage with the material. So in that case, when I was speaking with students and working with students, I will strongly suggest, get a job right after. You need to meet people again. You've been locked in your house for the past year plus. You haven't seen anyone but your parents or your legal guardians. I think you deserve the right to be out there again. So yeah, there's different phases definitely affected how I advise students about grad school.
Yeah, I know that the pandemic affected how people do interactions with each other because, like, I graduated in 2020. So the last semester of my courses were all online, and my graduation was a PowerPoint slide instead of an actual in-person walk across the stage type deal. But I completely agree with, trying to encourage students who have just finished their undergrad to go out and get like a job prior to going into grad school. Because if all you've done is school for the last 8 years, like you went from high school and then you went to college and now you're going to go into a master's or a PhD, which could take another 4 to 10 years of school. All you've done at that point is just schooling. Like you haven't really done anything else. You haven't been out in the real world and gathered experience. Like you could have internships or part-time jobs while you're in school, but definitely like securing some kind of financial stability is important, because when you're in grad school getting your master's or PhD, you're really paid peanuts. So you're kind of in the I'm broke or poor for the next however many years. But I mean, some individuals are lucky. Like if they go out and get a job and then their job's like, hey, we'll pay for you to go get your master's. So it can be a real struggle. So I think obtaining that financial stability prior to going into grad school will definitely help individuals' mental health getting through school. It's one less thing to worry about.
Yes, actually, when I was a grad student in Santa Cruz for almost 4 years, I was working as a teaching assistant. I never got a fellowship. So I recall at the time that my paycheck was close to $2,000 a month after taxes. Now, if you think about this, housing, put it like $1,000, right? $800 to $1,000. Then food, right? Someone like me who is active eats more than just a salad. I need more protein than that. That's easy. Assume $200 a month at least, 200 to 300, right? Any expenses like your phone,
Car
I don't know.
insurance.
Yeah, I was lucky I didn't have a car because I bike at the time. At the time, I didn't have a license, right? Again, being undocumented and being in San Francisco, some things you don't think about. And for me, I was like, I'm going to bike. I don't need a license. Why would I have a car in SF? Even if I could have a license, because, being undocumented, you couldn't at the time. Again, I was lucky I didn't have any dependents at the time. So for me, it worked barely. For some of my other peers across departments, they were coming to graduate school with loans, and they had to take loans to add to their current loans to make it through. In addition to this, I didn't know this. Of course, being a first-year low income, you find out these things as you're going. I know there's programs out there that help you out, like EOP. EOP is for undergrads, for example. I couldn't be an EOP student because I didn't have citizenship. At the time, they only work with permanent residents and US citizens. I didn't have that assistance. I was on my own in my undergrad. Anyway, I didn't know that I would only have an income when I had a TA shift, which meant that during the summers, I either had to find a job, I either had to become a research assistant of someone, or just don't work. I am glad I was able to find a job like through another professor, and it was like a research assistantship. There was one summer where I didn't get anything, and I'm glad that I was able to save money. So it was very rough. Oh my God, it was very rough. And it was like my colleague, we continued to joke. Remember rice and mayo? It's like, yeah, that was the diet of the day towards the end of the month. anything. And and I always pay respect to my undergrads because they will notice that certain months I will look extra grumpy. And some of them are like, hey, do you want me to swipe you into dining hall? I'm like, nah. And they're like, yeah, dude, like as you're telling us your experience, we sympathize with you because you're not getting paid anything. At least they were getting financial aid, Pell Grant, you name it. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate that. So sometimes they will just swipe me in. And I was really thankful for those undergrads who did that to all of us, to all grad students, because I was not the only one doing that. But it just showed like the building mentoring relationships, confianza, which is trust in Spanish. I was just lucky enough. And this is the other part. So in San Jose State, there was no assistance there. That's you pay your own. But I was lucky enough again to work in a nonprofit. And I told my director, like, hey, I'm going to start grad school. The same term I began working with them. Is it okay if I stay a little later in the office where everything is quiet and I can work? And she was like, oh, please use the office. Just lock it. And she's like, do you have to leave early to go to San Jose? And I was like, no, I think I can make the call. So she was also very conscious that trying to get a master's while you're working full time can be challenging. And she was trying to be accommodating. I appreciated that a lot. And then because it was a master's program, I did it part-time. So I could actually pay that in installments. Mm-hmm. So that was another way in which, yes, I'm comfortable, but I'm getting squeezed because it's expensive. Yeah, and that's another, I told that my students too, my financial situation in grad school too.
College can be rough. Like I was lucky enough to have a scholarship through the state of Florida that paid for my schooling. But I definitely, just for my undergrad, I never went and got my master's. Like, unless somebody's paying for my master's, I'm not going back. But I definitely had classmates who, they were struggling financially. And with the University of West Florida, when you're like a freshman, you're required to buy a meal plan. So generally towards the end of the semester, everybody's got so many swipes left for like the cafeteria or whatever. So you're just trying to use through them really quick. So you'll see somebody like, hey, do you want a meal? I got to get rid of these swipes because the money's not going to go back into your account. So you might as well just use it. So, and I think that's what made going to school during COVID so hard is you never got to see anybody. You couldn't really check in to see how everybody was doing mentally or anything like that. So I'm kind of glad that it's going back into in-person classes so that people can build those relationships again and like make friends so that you're not doing this alone. Because I can't imagine how hard it is to do it when like you're new to the country, you're still learning the language, how difficult, because we have international students come in all the time, whether it's through a study abroad program or they're just like new to the area. Finding ways to make them feel at home when they're so far away from home was super important. So with you getting your master's in applied anthropology, do you feel that has broadened kind of your perspective on the world?
Oh, hell yeah. And that's the thing. All my previous degrees from City College, they were in behavioral sciences. I always liked sociology during my undergrad years. My bachelor was in sociology, but I took psychology classes because, of course, undergrad, you're curious. And when I took the psychology classes, I was like, this is interesting, but there's something missing about this. And then sociology, sure, it was good. But then what terrified me from anthropology, it wasn't anthropology itself, but it was actually archaeology and the biological aspect of it. When I went to City College, it was a requirement to take a biological sciences and physical sciences. I took Anthropology 1 to avoid doing biology. Now, Anthropology 1, yes, there was some biology in it, but it wasn't just fully biology. And I passed the class with a B. I don't know how I did that, but I passed it. And I didn't like the content, but I'm like, and that was my first academic encounter with anthropology. Like, I get it, but I'm not that close to it. Not at least to this. And I didn't know, or I don't remember at the time, that it was just a branch of it. Now, I think that anthropology, and when I was growing up in Lima, high school is about 5 years. I finished my third before coming to the US. So we are exposed to anthropology through archaeology because we, of course, Peru, the Inca Empire, the remains. So we learn at a young age the role of archaeology in discovering, in trying to reconstruct human existence in different regions of the world. Now, what follows is a lot of our parents will say, oh, it's great that you like, archaeology, but archaeologists starve themselves. So at least in my household, I was not encouraged to pursue anything anthropology or archaeology related, but it was nonetheless a respectable profession, even if it didn't pay too much. And then moving forward, when I went to San Francisco State, yes, I was taking my classes, my upper division classes for sociology, but one of my first classes, it was with Professor Robert Collins, who had an anthropology degree from UCLA, who he was trained in the 4 branches. That was definitely my first class at San Francisco State and the most challenging one because he presented anthropology, and I believe the class was in relation to African and indigenous people's relations within the Americas. And his background centered the class centered a lot in the narratives from these 2 particular groups, of course, placing attention to ethnographic works, narratives, interviews, and how they were constructing, right, identities in a transnational way, just like across the countries, and how these identities were in conflict or in agreement and just moving continuously, just to briefly mention his class. And that was the first time I encountered anthropology like that. And he said, yeah, this is what anthropologists do. They talk to people, they try to understand human behavior by doing ethnographic work, by interviewing people. But it's not just like an interview that you can just get questions like yes or no or a survey. He's like, you want to know the community through the community's worldview. You become part of the community and trying to manage, of course, your own biases, trying to manage your positionality, your relation to the community. So he was very supportive about me trying to explore that. At the time, I'm like, I wish I could change majors, that I am literally really close to just finishing sociology. But that stuck to me. And then when I went to Santa Cruz, which was a very interdisciplinary program, I was reading everything from interdisciplinary education, anthropology. But I always noticed that a lot of the works that I was using or reading came from anthropologists. And and reading their works, I always feel more, I don't want to say compelled, but more that they will get to me more. They would just like connect with me some other way. I don't know why. There was something about it. And then, of course, I left that program and it was very academic. And as I am like thinking, well, I want to still do applied science or do something applicable with what I have done so far, my experiences, what can I do? And in San Jose, the closest college in San Jose, it would be San Jose State University. And they also have an applied program for sociology. But when I look at the curriculum between an applied sociology or sociology program and applied anthropology, I was like, the applied anthropology makes more sense to me because it was, well, the way you can look at it, right? It's like, it's not just theory, but it's also how do you apply anthropological theory and also methods to the life that you live in, to your context, to actually create change, foster change, not just like going to grad school, like to, get a PhD. Well, I met with the program coordinator, who was also a professor, who later became my mentor too. So yeah, it was there where I want to say I came late to the anthropology party, but it was there where I became more immersed in different anthropological works, in education, especially in education too, because that's where I was going. And I will say that it definitely has made me more, not just understanding, but also more empathetic, like more just being human, trying to meet others where they're at. I know growing up, and this is more complicated, growing up, my grandma, who is from the Andean region, in Lima, more like Puno area, which is closer to to Machu Picchu, let's just say that. Over there, they speak Quechua. When my grandma moved to Lima, she still kept speaking Quechua because in Lima, there's different neighborhoods where, Andean people are moving through. Mm-hmm. So she will drive me to buy groceries at a young age, 5, 4, 6. And I have these vague memories that she will go to this lady selling cheese, queso fresco, and then they will speak in Spanish with, of course, their Spanish wasn't like my Spanish. Their Spanish had a Quechua accent. But then after a few minutes, they will switch to Quechua. And I didn't understand that. I was like, what do they say? I can't understand that. And then they will go back to Spanish and then we will go back home. But I never asked my grandma what that was. In Lima, we're not encouraged necessarily to speak Quechua, especially if you're part of the mestizo middle class, whatever you have it. So I've been always interested in language, worldviews and things like that at a young age. I just never really had the space or the opportunity to explore it until I became more involved in anthropology. I'm like, oh my God, you guys have been going to like communities abroad and trying to study human existence and then compare it to like Western thought. I'm like, you guys, I was like, oh wow. So it has definitely made me more sympathetic. more understanding. Man, I wish in the future I can go back to grad school, but why not?
And I love that about anthropology, that it's connecting people. And I want to say anthropology is like the Switzerland of studies. When you try to remain neutral when you're doing a study, or you're asking questions, or you're talking to the individuals whose opinions or viewpoints might be different from your own. Because our whole point, or the whole point of anthropology, is to understand the human existence, where we have come from, where we are, and where we're going. So having to keep your biases out of like your studies or your conversations, I think is something that anthropologists are taught, more towards the beginning, so that they understand, like, you're not here to push your worldviews or your opinions on others. You're here to listen and to find common ground between you and someone else. I think that's what I love about anthropology.
And that's one thing actually that I like about my program in San Jose State. They encourage you to not just keep anthropology to yourself, but to, how do I say this? So part of their requirement to graduate is that you work with an organization on or off campus. And it becomes a challenge of every student to apply what they have learned in their classes. So if you look at the curriculum, like 18 units are literally just about classes, and the rest are like undergrad and another grads if you want. But for me, the curriculum, to give an idea, when I was doing a sociology degree, sure, I had to do some survey, like just design a survey, you pass the class. I was like, okay, just yes and no, right? Here, they were like, no. There was a class about qualitative methods. We're going to drill you into how to design surveys while you're learning, right? How to conduct interviews and do ethnography. I was lucky enough that at the time, and this is part of the outcome, because my degree is applied, I ended up doing program assessment and development. At the end, I realized, oh, okay, so this is what I can do towards the end of the last 3 classes. Like, okay, I've been grounded into this degree. How can I apply this into the real life? And I was lucky that my nonprofit was, at the time, we had students in our program, and every student had a mentor. They were working together. Now, the program grew so fast that we needed more feedback and what areas we could improve. So I volunteer to also practice what I'm learning in the classroom. How do I apply this? This will be an experiment for me. I volunteered to design a survey that can be distributed to students and mentors to ask them about not just their experiences, but like the support they're getting, what would they like to see, and their suggestions. So I designed these 2 surveys, then I get them back, then I analyze the whole thing myself. And again, the surveys are not just yes or no. There's a combination of questions, yes and no, disagree, agree, please explain in your words what you're saying, a little bit of everything, right? So you can see very straightforward answers and complex answers, because it is impossible for you to interview 200 people plus in the span of 5 months. There's no way, but a survey might help you do that right away. And that's one of the benefits that I love from my program, that they were drilling us to do that. And I apply it, and I produce some recommendations for them, such as through the pandemic and even before, mentors sometimes wanted to have a community. So I told them, look, this is one of their ideas across the board. They seem that they want to have a community. Let me create a Zoom space for anyone to show up, so new mentors can meet all mentors or veteran mentors, and they can start creating that. So for me, I became more immersed into like, okay, collect data, analyze the current structure of the organization, and produce recommendations about it. And I think that's one thing that I keep carrying with me after that program, because right now at UC Davis, and this is more like once you get a job, you need to think, okay, what else can I do here? So you have a more active role in your entity or organization or unit. There was this diversity, equity, and inclusion task force, and I joined, and we were thinking about potentially sending a survey to students, right, to understand what are the needs of grad students. And of course, we are located in Walker Hall, which is a space dedicated for grad students. So grad students come here, they have like spaces to work on, but we have one person then that connected me to a few grad students of color, also first gen, and I volunteer myself to conduct student panels. I met with these students off campus. I asked them, look, this is what I am. We're trying to make this building more accessible to you guys. Like, we're trying to make this building a place where you actually feel comfortable, where you actually want to come and study. So I was having panels with the students, collecting data, and I will present my findings. And now we are having events from different research organizations on campus to speak about their experiences and how they serve grad students. So I carry that with me, and I try to apply it in every context I go. Something like that, right? So it sticks with you. It just doesn't go away.
Anthropology is definitely something that can be used in almost everyday life. there are jobs for anthropologists out there. So before we get into the final 4 questions, is there anything we haven't discussed today that you would like to talk about for the listeners?
Yeah, if you're a person who has an MA and you're in your PhD, for example, right, and you might need the extra money or you want to teach and make some extra money, right, with the best intentions, of course, teaching first, you might want to consider looking at a community college system and applying to teach as an instructor, as an adjunct instructor or adjunct lecturer, I believe, because not only that's going to expose you to a different set of students in a community college system, diverse backgrounds, different ages, different degrees of understanding, for example, of English or math, whatever you may have. It is gonna give you an idea if you really want to teach in a research one institution or you want to teach in a college where they emphasize community work. If you are someone who is in a PhD right now and are really considering the fact that you want to teach instead of just publishing all the time, you might want to consider the community college and start teaching with them so you can get an idea. You most likely will need a master's and you will just have to apply and go through that whole process. But that should definitely help you with some cash and some idea into what is to teach. Because I'm in that route, I guess that's what you mentioned. So I've been always curious about teaching and I applied for this and I didn't know I would get it. I submitted an application for Cosumnes River College to teach ethnic studies. As someone who went to San Francisco State, you're also learning about ethnic studies, but I emphasize on Latino studies, but it's intertwined. So I apply and that was April of 23. And then on fall 23, I was like, hey, do you want to teach 2 classes? And I was like, can they be asynchronous? Because I'm familiar with asynchronous format from the student perspective. And they're like, yes. So I began teaching with CRC in a very fast way. Like I didn't have too much to prepare. So at night I would just work extra. And it's been nice to read a student's essays, to answer the questions via email or via Zoom. It gives you a sense of that you're helping others in a different way too. Like I'm helping grad students in UC Davis, but I'm also helping undergrad students who I can also relate because there are also students who want to transfer out or just want to do that, whether it's whatever their purpose is, to transfer out, to get a 2-year degree, or they're just curious. It just feels nice to give that, to give the students that particular perspective. And that's where I tell the students like, hey, so will you not transfer? Well, I think I want to go to UC Davis. And I'm like, tight. So what do you want to do? And they're like, oh, I don't know yet. And just trying to answer the questions to the best of their knowledge. And like I said, for me, it's very rewarding to just help the students. I can see myself on them. So that's another thing. Like don't be afraid of applying to opportunities that are just there. You just submit an application and who knows, they might call you. Like have an open mind about it. Be positive about it. And if you like student services and student interaction, then I think teaching is going to be a lot, right? Part of your life and part of your professional life too.
Which is perfect because it kind of goes right into one of the questions is, what's the best piece of advice you'd offer to someone who might be interested in what you do?
So if you are definitely interested in being within of course, the context of college access, college completion, which is kind of like what I've been swimming for the past years, things that are going to help you succeed on that particular whole topic. Definitely networking helps a lot. Being able to ask questions, clarifying questions, just keep asking questions, but also being mindful of others and how others might perceive you asking questions. And that's one thing I noticed, that while I can ask questions, I need to be more soft about it, not too direct, not too rude. Again, I was trying to polish myself as I'm going through my different spaces. But also, if you're going to be in college access and completion, you definitely want to be aware that all the students come from different backgrounds. They all have different agendas because they all have different goals. But because they come from different backgrounds, I mean that their needs are diverse. So definitely becoming familiar with what are some of the issues that, for example, undocumented students might face in trying to complete their undergrad degree, and those who want to go to the graduate education is very useful. Becoming familiar to the needs of African American students and why they might drop out is another thing to consider. So you definitely want to be mindful of like working with students implies working with a diverse population with different needs. You're going to need a lot of patience and a lot of commitment to serve as students. And definitely, I don't want to say you have to mentor, but you definitely want to make a distinction between advising students in a transactional way, which means like the DMD. You go to the DMD, you fill a form, you pay $200 for no reason, and they say, oh, okay, this will be done in 2 weeks or to the next screen. No. If you're going to work with the students, even at the grad level, you're going to have to meet them where they're at. There's a chance you will have to meet them where they're at. You have to assume that even though they might be grad students, they're still learning, especially in big institutions where resources are everywhere. And this is the first quarter they're here and they don't know what they're doing. So patience, but also don't do any transactional intentions with them. Try to be more human about it, more intentional about it. I think I had, how do I say this? One of my students in Davis, this is before I became an employee from UC Davis, and I had students in UC Davis. I will go to the campus and they were like, oh, is that like free food here? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it's called the food pantry. And they're like, where is it? I'm like, oh, let's go. So I went with like a few of them. I was like, look, this is for you. You're paying a lot of money and you have free food, and just be mindful not to grab everything, because remember, you're not the only one here. But go ahead, sign in, then just grab what you need. So there is that commitment, that patience that you have to have with the students. And definitely another thing that might help you, it's being transparent with the students, letting them know like you might have answers, but sometimes you won't have all the answers, but you will try to get those answers for them. Yeah, I think the last point for this is I noticed that success for students from diverse backgrounds is not the same for all of them. Some of them see success as getting a job in the Silicon Valley. Others' success is, I just want to get a job to help my family. Others is like, I just want to pass this class with a C. So also understanding what are the ideas that the students have behind their own notions of success, and how do you help them accomplish that to the best of your capacity. It's helping them develop a notion of sustainable success for themselves and how they can take it, because you tell them like, look, I'm helping you here. This is everything I can do. But the moment you graduate, you're going to be out there. So I want to equip you with the things that you need. So when you go out there, you can be independent and decide for yourself.
Yeah. Are there any changes you wish to see in the industry you work in?
I will say that increasing the pay does never hurt employees. I will definitely say that. And I think with our industry, I will say that for education, there is sometimes, and this is going to vary by state and by locality, but I feel that entities like nonprofits that support college students, right? Like, CSU, UC, private, you name it. I feel like there has to be more of a collaboration between them, because nonprofits that help the students, they might help the students when the students are in or out of the college campus. So there's always a disconnection. College spaces can only help the students that are on campus and during regular working hours. The students might be in these two programs, but these two programs don't know that they have the same student. So how can you provide a holistic support, right? How can you create more partnerships between nonprofits that have 50 students in UC Davis, right? And have like a connection with the EOP department in UC Davis, letting them know like, hey, I have 50 students that are in college track that are in EOP. Can we collaborate to create support for them when in college campuses and off college campus? So I feel like there has to be more of a development of those partnerships. But again, this might be taking place in other cities, states, but I will say that that's one of the shifts that we have to move forward, create in the future.
So if anyone's listening and wants to be that person that connects things, go ahead and do it. But anyways, so what do you just absolutely love about your job?
When I'm able to answer someone's question and then I get an answer that says, thank you very much for breaking it down. Now I can actually submit this on time. A lot of the things that we do are also within deadlines. And while I cannot bend the deadline of that, I can make sure to answer everything you need so you are in the deadline. But when you get a thank you message, even a thank you message, thank you for helping with this. Oh my God, thank you for breaking it down. You rock. Nobody has explained this to me. Or in person, I think, what was it? I think a few months ago, I met another Peruvian national, and he was also a new international student doing a master's in a STEM, one of the STEM programs in UC Davis. And we just began chatting. And he's like, so like, what is the hardest thing here? And I was like, you're going to starve yourself in regards to like food, right? Like jokingly, like I tell him like, yeah, there's going to be some changes. The food, the condiments are not the same here. You're going to eat. I'm not saying starve like, biologically, but flavor culture wise, it's going to be difficult. But I tell him like, yeah, but there's these things to do around Sacramento, around Davis. If you want to go to get more Peruvian products, go to these stores. So I'm then like, oh my God, like, thank you very much for helping me with this. I'm like, yeah, I get it. This is what happened when I came to the US. So getting that, I guess that's also one of the things about helping students is like they recognize when you're just sharing knowledge that their peers might not know, that their department might not know, but at a macro level, I know, and this is not just limited to just the Peruvian students. I met other students who are like from Mexico or from Brazil. I was like, you're not Peruvian, but I understand what is to come here from another country having no knowledge whatsoever. Just like how I was helped at the beginning, I also want to continue that help in different spaces.
That's amazing. So finally, where can listeners learn more about you or the work that you do?
So I think by now I'm kind of public. If you actually Google my name, it's an article of me when I was a grad student in Santa Cruz. And LinkedIn, I have my LinkedIn as well. And I was able to, like in San Jose State, we had a faculty. Across faculty, they were always saying, "Oh, you guys want me to publish? Like, we support you guys publishing, and we want you guys to use at the time practicing for anthropology." So if you Google my name, you're also gonna find that I have a publication in that journal. So my name is kind of public out there, and then my journal tells you, the publication might tell you what I did in San Jose State specifically. But yeah, you can reach out to me. My email is. If you Google my name, Edher Zamudio and UC Davis, you're going to find it out. LinkedIn, an email as well. So yeah, and I'm trying to think of another publication too. I think it's time for another thing.
Yeah, well, it was a pleasure having you on today. It was great talking to you.
No, yeah, thank you, Abby, for inviting me and just sharing our experiences. That was fun.
Yes, of course. And if you ever, change jobs or move up in your job degree or anything like that, and you have new stuff to talk about, I'd love to have you back on for another episode.
Oh yeah, the follow-up.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
No, yeah, thank you, Abby.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of AnthroPuzzled. This show was produced by me. A special thanks to Cheyenne Brewer for editing the website, Leah Akers for the incredible logo design, and to Fiona, AnthroPuzzled's newest intern, for editing the episode descriptions. The music is courtesy of Chad Crouch, aka Poddington Bear of Sound and Picture. If you have any questions, you can reach me at abby.letsinger@anthropuzzled.com or as AnthroPuzzled on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, or YouTube. Until next time.